Okay, well, we should probably get started. And today I feel like we have some very cathartic discussions, in part because Ellen and I need catharsis. So welcome to our collective catharsis day. But I will say, I'm gonna get our, let me close that out so we can have online pedagogy. There we go. So, nope, that's not at all. Man, wheels are coming off here. Okay. So there is, perfect. Okay, week 5. Welcome. And announcements. Next week, we are doing some discipline-specific workshopping. I will send out a link for people who want to, so this will be more partnering you with people who are, so if you want to workshop assignments or syllabi, putting language courses together, putting courses that are dealing with more history, more whatever, trying to partner people up into smaller groups. I will send out a survey if you are interested in doing that, and we will put people into some groups for that. Also, we are not recording breakout groups, but we are recording all of the general stuff. And this is we'll talk about this more, but this is a thing that I just learned, that many states have rules about making sure your students know that they're being recorded. And so both from an ethical perspective and from a legal perspective, apparently, that is important. So we will discuss that when we get to the slide that says surveillance. Okay, so Ellen, I trust you will keep an eye on the chat if I'm doing something terribly wrong. Cool. Goals and objectives. So today, what we are working on is adjusting our classroom policies for teaching in the pandemic environment, and strategies for avoiding burnout and strengthening balance in our own lives. So Ellen will be leading us through discussions of strengthening balance and avoiding burnout. I, in particular, am very excited to discuss this with people, because I feel sort of like many of us are already exhausted and the semester hasn't even started. This is the time that we have sort of built into our lives as either time to research, time to think our own thoughts, time to spend time with friends and family, and the time that generally refreshes us in one way or another is not feeling super refreshing in light of just the constant not knowing anything. And so that, and also, you know, chaos in the world writ large. So that will be what we discuss today. So I'm going to talk about policies, and this is going to be a quick overview of a lot of things. There are some links, but I would mainly like us to talk to one another about what our policies are, how we might change them, what our online policies should be. So these are some things that we are going to talk about. Attendance policies, textbook policies, grading policies, camera policies. And I don't have a slide set up specifically for camera policies here, but I would encourage you to look at, I very self-indulgently, that laptop policies is just a link to my blog and my opinions about laptops. But also digital tools is someone else having opinions there. And camera policies is, I am very torn on the camera of it all, but I think I'm going to talk to my students a little bit more explicitly about what the rationale for having cameras on or cameras off is. And that links to a really useful PDF that talks about kind of the pros and cons of your students having their cameras on. But it's worth considering. You get more of a personal connection. I like to be able to look at pictures of people who are at least seeming to like nod or smile if I tell a joke. Not having that feedback, I have become acutely aware of how much I, as a teacher, in some ways am a performer. Like, I need to get that reinforcement from my students that like they're following me, they're not following me, they look confused, they look like they want to say something. And all of those visual cues, without cameras, I don't have them. And if we're teaching some kind of hybrid policy or some kind of hybrid course, masks interfere with that as well, right? If I don't know if students are smiling, and I'm not great at reading people's eyes. So, you know, not having a mouth really makes it hard for me to see how people are responding to things, which means that I'm going to need to develop some other way of having that contact and that check-in with my students. So that being said, there is, you know, you are coming into someone's home. There are a lot of things that we want to think about when we ask our students to have their cameras on for Zoom. So I think at least discussing it with your students, letting them know why you might like them to have their cameras on. I just came out of a workshop that Gonzaga was running, and they specifically asked us to please turn our cameras on. And I don't always want to, I mean, it made me, because I've been thinking about this, it kind of made me acutely aware that, like, now I have to be on display. I caught myself like shoving a handful of food in my mouth on camera, and just, I became more acutely aware, because I have been thinking about these questions, of how much I don't like being constantly on. And so, you know, just things to think about. I'd encourage you to go look through that. And then the syllabus is kind of the place where we express a lot of these policies. And so talking about what exactly a syllabus is, what it can, what it should include. In some ways, it is a statement of values. Right? It is setting out the tone. It establishes what this class is going to be like. There are many people in this call who have really delightful syllabi. Suzanne Lai gave a great talk about syllabi. This was a while ago at a conference that I can link to the material from that, but about the syllabus as kind of an invitation to a conversation, and the visual syllabus is something that really kind of invites students in and lets them know, like, this is going to be fun and exciting, and just kind of setting a different tone, as opposed to very tiny font and it feeling like one of those terms and things at the end of a car commercial or something. So I would encourage you to think about a basic needs statement. Now, possibly more than in the past, students' basic needs are going to be possibly not met, or not met in the way they need to be met. And so this basic needs statement just gives in some sample language that you can include or do your own. Just talking about if you don't have secure housing, secure food, secure this and that, where can the student go on campus? Who can they talk to? Can they talk to you? Are you aware of these being issues? If nothing else, even if you can't do much to help in a student who is in financial distress, the fact that you're aware that they might be, right? The fact that you're aware of housing insecurity, that you're aware of food insecurity, that you're aware that a lot of people are losing jobs and having unexpected medical expenses, and how precarious a lot of basically everyone's economic situation is right now, sends a message to your students. Syllabus is also a place where you can think about collaborative course design. I've been leaving some blank spots on my syllabus as I originally formulate it, so that we can do some of it together with the class. That first day of class I've been using in part for collaborative course design. I just sent out a survey to my students for my Greek myth class in the fall, asking them a list of learning objectives that I might have for the class, and asking them, which of these are more important to you? Right? Why are you taking this class? What do you want to get out of it? And that includes everything from, you know, learning to present better, learning to write better, to it fulfills a core requirement, and I needed to check that box. And I gave them sort of very important, a little bit important, not very important, don't even care about this. And it's been really useful for me to see what do students want to get out of this? I want to learn some cool stories about Greek stuff. I want to this and that. And the wording is not exactly how I would put it as learning outcomes. The language is, but just kind of things that I think they might answer for what they want to get out of the class, just to get a sense where my students are, so I can keep that in mind while I actually put together what I want them to get out of the class. Communicating expectations and commitments. This is a place we can be really transparent about how students will be graded, what are you expecting from them? I think a lot of anxiety comes from having no idea if students are primed to think about grades as the currency, as the way that they are valued in the classroom. And this is a chance for us to let them know, are they doing a good enough job? Because I think that is really a concern that our students have. And we might want to dissuade them from focusing on that, like the grade, the grade, the grade. But at the end of the day, that is kind of the currency of the classroom, and they do want to know how they're going to be assessed and if they are doing good enough or well enough. So that is another thing that the syllabus can do. Okay, moving, well, I don't know what I just did. Apologies. Oh, that's basic needs. Okay, let me come back to are people, oh, I have just made a huge mess here. Let me stop share and fix this. Okay, percent. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay. I really like this article a lot. I would recommend folks take a look at it because I think it's super great, by Andrea Stella, and Institutional Care, Designing for Access. And this goes into talking about, they ask students to bring in previous syllabi that they have and talk about the policies and places where policies from other courses that they've taken have not worked for them, have not been good. And I love this experiment so much, or this activity so much, because these are places where students, 6 absences is failing, excused or unexcused, right? 80% of the grade is based on 4 exams, and places where students, are asked to think about what the messages and what the implications of course policies are. Textbook must be purchased, cannot be printed from a PDF. That's sending messages to students, and that is making it harder for certain students to participate in the class. So a lot of these things, if you have your phone out, 30 points will be taken from your final grade. This gets into, I think all of us have had situations where life is scary and uncertain, and we might really need to get an important phone call about how someone is doing, someone in the hospital, someone, maybe you have a child who you might need to be on call. My phone is near me at all times. If there was an emergency, I would know because I would see it on my phone. I would see it on my little watch that pops up my phone notifications. My students should have that same right. So that is, I thought it was just a really good exercise that this instructor did with their students. So I'm just gonna, a lot of these are just questions. We're gonna talk about them in small groups, but attendance policies. What is your goal? Is it punishing students? Probably not a good attendance policy. So kind of draconian attendance policies are not great. So for attendance policies, I am pretty upfront with my students about, I know that things happen. Please just keep an open line of communication with me. If you have to miss class, if as much as you feel comfortable, tell me why. And we will work on a way to help you make up what you miss, as opposed to, well, that's one of your 3 absences, and if you get 3, you fail. I have started, because some universities have attendance policies that are basically, you should not be less strict than this policy. Like this is, we require X. I've started building language into my syllabus that specifically says what specifically builds in a policy that is in alignment with the university policy, but also kind of gives me some more wiggle room. So, the university says you can't miss more than 3 classes. I don't consider it a missed class if we make it up in office hours later. Right? So things that, same deal, when I was at Notre Dame, I was told that I couldn't give a student an alternate, the disability office told me I couldn't give her an alternate assignment. And it was, they were wrong. And I was told it wasn't worth fighting that fight. But ever since then, I have put on my assignments or an alternate assignment that you and I agree meets the same learning outcomes. And so, building that language in there to give yourself some wiggle room. Universal design and accessibility. So going back to thinking about, if my students have medical conditions they don't want to tell me about, if I have an attendance policy that requires a doctor's note, if they want to miss class, that is forcing them to tell, like, they don't need to tell me those things. If I, as an adult, say, I can't make this because of a medical, or I can't make this because of a personal reason, no one asked me to provide a doctor's note. My students are adults. I'm going to give them that same courtesy. And, if a student is missing a lot of classes where I'm concerned about them, or they're going to be missing parts of the class, we can address that more. But I have come up with a much more, I'm going to assume that you are an adult and you are interested in doing your best in this class. What can we do to make that work for you? If you have a work shift that you can't move, we'll work around that. Especially right now, as a lot of students are trying to pick up whatever jobs they can. I have several students who have mentioned to me that they are trying to get jobs because their parents lost jobs, and they are trying to get jobs to help support their family. I can work around their schedule at now more than ever. I'm going to make some flexibility built into my class. I'm going to sidebar the conversation that Ellen's going to lead us in later. There comes a point where I cannot be so flexible that I am burning out, and I don't do a good job of walking that line, which is why Ellen is leading that section, because I shouldn't be talking about it because I haven't mastered that at all. Textbook decisions, just some things to be thinking about. Cost of books. Sometimes you don't have a choice about what textbook you're using, but I will be very selective about what books I ask my students to buy, as opposed to things that I think I can assemble from open source stuff, things that are out of copyright. So thinking about open access materials. Course reserves ? This is a place where it's unclear what our libraries will look like. I have had on my to-do list for several weeks, and I will maybe finally be doing it today after this meeting, talking to my librarians about, can we get ebooks that students can all have access to? What are our options in terms of course reserves in an electronic format? Can we scan some things? In the spring, our library said they would talk to the publishers, and they were basically like, do what you need to do in terms of scans. We'll talk to publishers about copyright. So talk to your librarians. Librarians are super great anyway, and they are the person to talk to see what you can do in terms of helping make material available. DIY materials. Student created materials are great because students are creating the materials. That is a really good learning objective for them. And then you can have a resource bank generated over time, especially for language courses. This is such a good option of having students create sentences to model a certain construction, a certain grammatical idea. And then the next time around, your new students can use those sentences and create their own, right? So this is, I mean, pedagogically, this is really great. And also you are generating a lot of your own materials. A lot of people who have been teaching longer than I have, and at the same institution for longer than I have been able to put together some really great, assembling primary sources, and they don't need a textbook anymore. That is awesome. That is not something I have been able to do yet, because that takes time and expertise that I don't necessarily have yet, but that is also a way to avoid excessive textbook cost. I probably shouldn't be saying this on a recording, but I get a lot of desk copies for things. I get desk copies that I say, like, I am considering adopting this book, and I might not really be considering adopting this book, but now I have an extra copy of a resource that I would like. I can put it in the library. If the library can't get a copy, I can share it with a student, even if, like, I got some books that I already own a personal copy of this semester, by saying, like, I am considering using it for a course. I just, there are a lot of ways to get desk copies that can help you kind of work out a way to get copies to students who need them. Microgrants are available. We should not be making a $200 textbook list and then telling students to go find microgrants. That is sort of exploiting. Folks who are in classics are aware Sportula is a really great resource. It should not be built into our, I'm going to make my book list cost a lot of money and then tell everyone to go ask Sportula for money to make it up. Department funds. A lot of times departments have some money that they can help out with. So letting students know about that. And again, even just signaling that you understand that books cost money is a nice gesture. I was told in grad school, and I quote, "I know how much we pay you in a stipend. You can afford to buy all the books for this course." It was close to $1,000 of books. So, showing that you understand that books are expensive and people might not have that much money is just a signal that you are thinking about your students' financial well-beings. Grading policies. We've talked about this a bit, but I just wanted to kind of throw out Grading policies, we've talked about ungrading. Self-assessment, there's a nice link there to someone talking about their experiences with self-assessment. I know Suzanne has had some really great in the Discord, has talked a lot about some of the different grading things that she's used. Choose your own grading adventure. This is more work on the professor's part, but letting students, how would you like your grade to be? Do you want to do more papers? Do you really like doing papers? Would you like to do a presentation in class? I've started giving students 15% of their grade that they get to pick. There are options. They can tell me what they want that 15% to be. It is harder to keep track of on the professor side. Participation grades. What does a participation grade mean? Is it, do you have to say 3 things and you're checking off what the students are doing? What is it? What constitutes participation in a class, and being transparent about that? I put in, you know, it is important for me that you engage with your colleagues. If you are not comfortable speaking up in class, talk to me. We'll come up with ways to structure that better to help you participate and engage with your classmates. That's going to look different. What participation looks like online is going to look different. I had sort of a policy when we went online that was either you show up to a Zoom class, or you post in a forum, or you do an extra reading response. So that participation grade could be a variety of different things. Contract grading is sort of, I love this, sort of, what grade do you want? I will tell you what you need to do to get that grade. Because there are going to be students in classes that are looking for a C. They're taking the class pass fail, and they, you know, they don't need to get an A. That is a really great thing to know in advance, so that you are not concerned that a student is falling off the grid, is having problems, when really they're just managing their time in accordance with, you know, they just want to see. So they don't need to do more than a C level of work, and that's okay, as much as it sometimes hurts our teacher feelings. That is okay. Late work and extensions. What is your policy? My policy is way more flexible now than it used to be. Collaborative rubric design, letting students have a voice in exactly how you're grading their papers, their assignments, their whatever. Those are good things. And then just kind of the big question here, what do your policies promote? What values do they communicate? Having a grading policy that is punitive, or that causes students to want to take fewer risks because they are so concerned with losing points, is not, to my mind, a good grading policy, right? I want my students to feel like they can take chances. I want them to feel like growth is important. And so if they improve over the course of the semester, I generally weight things later. They have the option, if you do better on the final exam than your midterms, it replaces the midterms. If you have improved over time, I want that to be reflected in your grade. That is important to me. That is something that I value. And I have a lot of, you know, you can drop your lowest X. So there's no downside to trying something if you're not good at it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You can drop your lowest quizzes, papers, whatever, other kinds of things. Surveillance. I will redirect people to the post that I love so much of against cop shit in the classroom. But, you know, what are our policies about trusting our students? I don't use Turnitin or exam software. Ideologically, I am opposed to them. I can explain why if people have questions. I don't like them. I don't want to be surveilling my students that way. And as I just learned today, apparently in my state of Washington, you need 2-party consent to record. And so I will be reminding my students that, as we did at the beginning of this session, that this is being recorded. And then I just want to talk super quickly about online personas, because this is a concern that I have when we expand our classes out into an online space. I don't want my like some of my students have social media profiles that are separate from who they want to be in class. And that's fine, that's good. They probably should have a separate life that is not my class. So if we ask or even demand that our students engage on Twitter, engage on other platforms, at the very least, give them the option to make a class-specific profile, because students have an online brand, a public image, a public persona that they are, and that may not be a classic student, right? We cannot, I do not want to force my students to be taking their online personas and making it about Greek mythology or Latin language or whatever. And so just being aware that An online persona is an increasing part of our students' identities, especially now that almost our entire life is mediated through the internet in lockdown. So just being aware of these issues, and that things on the internet are kind of forever. So if we are forced, like if we are requiring students to write public facing blog posts, think about their privacy as part of that. Some students will want to be public junior scholars, some do not. And I had some students who wanted to make sure that their name was nowhere on stuff that they could make a public facing thing as part of a class, but they did not want their name to be part of it. So just thinking about those issues. And that is it. So we're gonna break up into, I'll put these into the chat, I'll put these into the chat, but so what policies do you feel good about? What policies do you like and have really been working and you feel like have been very conducive to a good class environment? Are there policies that your students have mentioned? Like they loved seeing X on your syllabus. They loved that your policy was this. And then are there policies that you want to do better on? Are there policies that maybe you haven't thought about camera use? Maybe you haven't thought about textbook things. So are there places where you would like to refine or improve? And do your group mates have ideas for how to improve that? We are going to, as a nice change of pace, designate a reporter for each group to bring a few bullet points from the group discussion out to the larger group.